Today on the Amazons. This is a very touching topic for any parent and for our society. Child sexual abuse is on the increase.
They say if you want to know the mind of a killer, you need to think like a killer or actually kill in order to know. I don't think it's possible for anyone to actually understand what goes through the mind of an adult when abusing a helpless child.
I do not in any form accept sexual abuse or any sort of abuse on a child or even an adult. But let me play the devil's advocate. It's a disease.
If you have sexual intercourse with a child, you will be sentenced to life imprisonment. It's as serious as that.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Amazons.
Child sexual abuse was a thing people talked about in hushed tones in the past. Sadly, in our society today, children are constantly abused with very little or nothing done about it. However, in recent times, the issue has been raised to the top burner of national discourse. And there seems to be more awareness, perhaps due to more activism and searchlight beamed on the subject and a vibrant social media which reports news on the go. Experts describe child abuse sexually as every sexual activity between an adult and a child to meet the adult's sexual need or interest. Today on the Amazons. This is a very touching topic for any parent and for our society. Child sexual abuse is on the increase. Although it is being talked about, what laws are there to protect the child from sexual harassment or abuse by an adult? Our topic today on the Amazons is on child sexual abuse. Bimbo and DOLAPO. First of all, we have to know, who is a child? What age can you consider?
Look, for me, a child under 16 is a child. You have young adults, yes, but from under 16, they're still young. They don't have a right to do so many things. They're still under their parents' supervision. But in this case, we're also talking about babies. Babies, 2 to 13. Because when you hear of cases of sexual abuse, it's usually within that age range, 2 to 13. Sometimes even earlier than 2, 9 months, which is the height of ridiculous. So a child is between, from when you're born till before you're 16, when you reach the age of consent and certain things.
You see, when things like this happen, you want to rationalize the act of the person who is sexually abusing a child. What can push an adult, a man for instance, although boys also are being abused, young boys, to want to have intimacy with a child, a minor, an infant sometimes? What kind of man would do that?
They say if you want to know the mind of a killer, you need to think like a killer or actually kill in order to know. I don't think it's possible for anyone to actually understand what goes through the mind of an adult when abusing a helpless child, because the children are helpless because they can't even defend themselves. Aside from that, they're not even at the age where some of them don't even know the right from the wrong as well. So it's impossible to comprehend as a decent human being with ethics, morals, and values to actually be able to comprehend what such people would be thinking about when they're committing such
I'm going to play
acts.
The devil's advocate, and people understand this. I do not in any form accept sexual abuse or any sort of abuse on a child or even an adult. But let me play the devil's advocate. It's a disease. They're called pedophiles. It's a disease. What happens is that they're only sexually turned on by children. As you have all sorts of psychological diseases, it's also a disease, and a lot of them can't help themselves.
But what about the people, a man who has a family, he has a wife, he has children, who abuses his own child? Is that also a disease?
They're pedophiles. The truth of the matter is that what really turns them on sexually are children. Not the adults they've married because society expects it of them, especially in a country like Nigeria, where we still have, our traditional background and we believe in a lot of traditional things. The only reason they're marrying is so that they can say, okay, I've done what the world expects of me. This is my wife, these are my kids. But what really makes them, turns them on sexually, like I said, is children.
So today we will be talking to those who deal with the issues of sexual abuse for minors. We will be talking to a lawyer, we will be talking to an activist. And indeed, we will also be talking to a psychologist, because like we said, if it's a disease, where can they seek help? A child that has been molested, where can they seek help? And for the child who has been abused and molested, where can he or she also find help? It will be after the break. You are watching The Amazons.
Whenever he didn't want to sexually assault me, he would be very mean, calling me names. And I would wonder, for goodness sake, what was I doing wrong?
As a teenager, I was gang raped. As a woman, I was also raped. But all through all of that, I knew something wasn't right about all of it.
It's sad to say, and I regret this, that my father, until he died, never knew.
It's something that I believe we must teach children. You have to say, when somebody touches you here, or when somebody says this to you, or when uncle is and you're uncomfortable with uncle, tell me. When do we start this training?
I would often say, as soon as the child starts to speak. Asking questions.
Over the years, the vexed question and issues of violence against children, especially the girl child, has continued to be on the front burner. Much more disturbing is the rampant occurrence of child sexual abuse, to which the society does nothing more than pay mere lip service. Children are left to suffer from this trauma inflicted on them, sometimes not by strangers, but by family members as close to them as even their biological fathers. This development is worrisome and defies reason as to why a full-grown adult would so defiantly seek sexual gratification in a child.
We don't really know how grave the situation is, because the issue of child molestation is actually something that is kept quiet within the families. So the fact that we're even having increasingly a higher number of reports now does not really reflect the reality. I think it's so much more than that.
The people you trust and trust you, test the first 10 or 20. Find out if they were ever abused as children, if they recollect. You will be shocked that most people, as early as the age of 4, 5, recall that they were abused in one way or the other. And the sources of this abuse, again, may shock you. You may find that the people closest to the home front, the family, the caregivers, the relatives, neighbors, everybody just, essentially have a go.
The unthinkable acts, a heinous crime of the highest order, is threatening to take the Nigerian society decades of centuries back to the Hobatian state, where bestiality, the animal nature, was the order of the day. Decent minds in the society would want to know why this is happening.
But we have to see it from two ways. One, it's a psychological problem, as in pedophilia. And why we don't want to accept it, because, for most of us from Africa, we find it difficult to accept the idea that someone has a mental illness. that makes him or her more attractive to children. But pedophilia is definitely a psychological condition that can be medically treated. Then on the other hand is the issue of impunity. People have all kinds of sexual fantasies which they want to act out. But because we are in a society that tends to be to preach moral uprightness, so people tend to hide and suppress these sexual urges. And if they can't control it anymore, they look for people that they have access to.
As this condemnable pastime of perverts pervades, where does the buck stop as far as curbing the menace is concerned?
Because the demands of society, the quest to survive is huge. The burden is huge, maybe more so than before. Parents have to depend on third parties to help care for their children, and the risk is ultimately heightened in this regard. So I would say that it has become a bit of a national issue, and there's no reason why it can't be escalated to that point, because every child should be protected.
In view of the almost non-existence and lack of security by way of enforcement of existing laws and punishment to offenders, citizens can only do their personal, private best to ward off child sexual abuse criminals.
You see, we are not short of good laws. There are so many. I'm a lawyer. I've gone through all the law books. We have so many good laws. But what we're having problem in Nigeria is the issue of implementation.
Welcome back to the Amazons. Today on the program, we are still discussing child abuse. Where can a minor is called a child who does not consent to sexual relationship with an adult, and yet they are forced into it anyway. We have two guests in the studio, two very important and women with strong character. They've been victims of sexual abuse as children. Now they are doing something to make sure that those responsible, answer for it, and they will also be telling us on what can be done to protect the child so that they are not, the child is not scared for life. We have Chinyere Eyo, who is the founder and executive director of the Sexual Offenses Awareness and Victims Rehabilitation Initiative. Chinyere Eyo.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Chinyere, for joining us. Thank you. Also joining us is Dr. Princess OLUFEMI-KAYODE, who is the CEO of the Media Concern for Women and Children. Dr. OLUFEMI-KAYODE, please join us.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Hello, Doctor. Thank you for joining us. Please have a seat. Please, should be doing it that way. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Kayode and Chinyere. We want to know, we introduced you as people who are now creating awareness about this child sexual abuse that is prevalent in our society now. Would you want to share your story with us? I'll start with you, Chinyere.
I was born, brought up in Lagos, and when I was 4 years old, an uncle of mine came to visit, and nobody was at home. He took advantage of me, sexually abused me. And I can remember at that time I didn't tell anybody. Such things were not discussed in the 70s. How could I have gone up to my mom and said, uncle touched me here or did this to me? And so I kept it to myself. 2 years later, another relative of mine came from the village. My father brought him down to Lagos to train him, and for 8 years, right under the roof of my parents, sexually abused me. Of course, it didn't start out at that. He took his time, grooming me, getting me comfortable with a touch, buying things, manipulating me, taking advantage of my vulnerability. and whenever he didn't want to sexually assault me, he would be very mean, calling me names, and I would wonder, for goodness sake, what was I doing wrong? And so when he did want to sleep with me, I would be ready to do anything, and so I would say most times children are just vulnerable, they want to be loved, they want to be accepted, and once they find that in a person, an adult, they just open up themselves.
Your parent didn't suspect anything all this while this was going on?
No, they did not. He was the perfect uncle, doing his chores, doing everything, taking care of us, and then again, I didn't say anything. Most times children will not talk for myriad of reasons, So I kept quiet, he kept quiet, and everything just went on as though it was normal.
So this went on until he left the house?
No, it went on for 8 years, and I remember that evening. Somehow I just came to myself and said, look, Chinye, I was 13 at the time. And I just said, I can't allow this go on. I just knew it was wrong all the while, but I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know if I even wanted it to stop, But then at that age of 13, I just told myself, I can't go on like this.
So you were the one eventually who had to tell?
Exactly. I told him, Uncle, I'm not doing this. He thought I was joking. 1 or 2 times he tried, making advances, but I stood my gun, and said, I wasn't doing this anymore.
So did you eventually, how did you now break the news to your parents? How did you let them know?
It's sad to say, and I regret this, that my father, until he died, never knew. In fact, my mother knew the year I wanted to come out with my story and start, doing the work that I'm doing presently. I didn't want her hearing it, from TV or from, people who came across me. And so I told her, and she was devastated. How could this happened right under her, and that's why I have the passion, to do what I'm doing, letting parents know that, look, unless you train yourself to recognize the signs and become the parent you are meant to be, it can go on right under your nose, and you will not know.
Okay. So, Dr. Kayode, how is your story similar to hers, or was it a different story for you?
Very different, though, of course, it started with family members. Interestingly enough, it was not an adult. It was more of a senior cousin, probably 4 years older, that started during some holidays to my mom's place. And I didn't tell anyone, of course, also. But I think when I was either 12, another uncle of mine on my father's side was a living uncle. He was discovered. My parents discovered he was molested. And I remember my father said, my mom should take me and go clean your daughter up. And he was sent out of the house. And that was there was no more discussion about that. But that did not end the abuse, not directly from him. One thing that true experience has shown is children who have been molested are very susceptible to being molested again. And you could move them from this location to any other location, and they are easily picked out, So it was much more like I was carrying this signal on my head, molest me. And so, because you find different people just wanting to touch you, different people wanted to molest you, and that went on. And of course, later on, I got into gang rape. As a teenager, I was gang raped. As a woman, I was also raped. But all through all of that, I knew something wasn't right about all of it.
Okay, so for most abuse of children, it's usually from known family members.
Yes. Yeah, mostly.
Okay, so what signs can parents, look out for in their children? I mean, or is it that you want to stop family members from coming to the house?
Interestingly
to
enough,
live with you?
Yeah, I say to people, anyone can molest. But you also have to be careful, not everybody is a molester. It's just like HIV, it's not in the face. But we need to be cautious, because one thing I've seen in working in this area for 15 years, I've seen that the message is a message like you're going to hellfire. When they start talking about hellfire, everybody's like, people go to God because of fear of hellfire. So people get too afraid because of the dynamics surrounding child sexual abuse. It's not just family members, it's actually people who are closest to the family. There could be neighbors, there could be cleaners, gardeners, drivers, teachers, pastors, people who are just close. Lesson teacher, because we've seen many women who come to say, lesson teacher was actually molesting me right under my parents' nose on the same table, and they didn't know something was going on. But you find the issue of signs, we need to be careful not to send a message of fear. So you're afraid of every other person you're looking at. It's just basically like she said, you just need to be able to tune yourself up. I talk to women have what we call intuition. When you say, what are the signs can also not be sexual abuse. Do you understand? It could be the child is troubled about something else. So we need to be careful, except there's physical signs of bleeding or you have sexual transmitted infection, then you can say, yes, this child was molested. And just like I said, it starts from a point. Not every child is penetrated, but it is still abuse because the child has been exposed to sexual activity. And you have 2-year-old, you have 1-year-old, we've had an 18-year-old, 18-month-old baby. We've seen all kinds of cases, but what you find there is intuition.
There's a point I'm trying to bring out here, and the point is, all these people, like we said before you came on set, most of these people that do this thing are people that are very, very close to the family. And would you say it's actually the parents' fault in the sense that these children, most of these children that get abused, sometimes is it that their parents are neglecting them, that they now look for acceptance and love from other people that exposes them to such?
No, before they answer, this is my opinion anyway. The fault would absolutely 100% be to that person who is abusing the child, not the parent's fault. It will not be the child's fault. But in any case, you answer the question, please.
You know, most perpetrators will take their victims through what we call the grooming process. And that's why we say any child, every child is vulnerable to being abused. Now, if a stranger comes up to a child and says, oh yeah, lie down, open up your legs, of course the child will scream or shout. So what the abuser does is to get the child comfortable with sexual activity. And it starts with buying the trust of that child. The perpetrator works on the child to accept him or her, because females also do abuse, to accept him or her as the perfect uncle or the perfect aunt. And sometimes where the family members, where the parents are known by or known to the abuser also grooms the parents to accept them in their children's lives. And so they are always there when they need help with taking care of the children. They are ready to babysit. They show themselves to love the children. They buy things for the children. So when the uncle or the aunt now says, hey, I want to take your child out, I can give you some free
measure
time.
Of trust.
Exactly.
Already.
Trust has been built.
I need to ask a question, because obviously when we have people within our circle, our children tend to trust them because they see that we have a relationship with them and they react based on what we do. So at what age do we start training our children or teaching our children about sexual abuse? Because it's something that I believe we must teach children. You have to say, when somebody touches you here, or when somebody says this to you, or when uncle is are you uncomfortable with uncle, tell me. When do we start this training?
I would often say as soon as the child starts asking questions. You don't wait until that golden moment when you sit the child down. By that time, the child already knows way more than you or you want to tell him or her. So it starts 2-3 years old. Let the child become comfortable with their body parts. Call them by name. Let the child know that you can be their first point of call when it comes to any questions they have. Let them know they can be comfortable talking to you about anything. And then in everyday conversation, in what you're doing, in everyday activity, talk about it. Take advantage of
program
of teachable moments, and just chip things in. And then also let them know that no matter what happens, they can come to you, not just by telling them, but letting them know they are your priority. And so even if the child wants to talk to you or tell you something and you're talking with a friend, you could excuse that friend and say, okay, Junior, what do you want to say? Let them know they can come to you at any time and talk to you about anything. And of course, I would often tell them, I also tell parents, let children know that not every uncle or aunt is a friend. Because in our culture, everyone older than a child is an uncle or an aunt. And what we teach our children is that adults
should be respected.
They are always right. But if you let them know that uncles can be wrong and uncles can do things to you that are wrong, especially sexual activity, then your children are much more
aware and informed.
Yes, and
okay. Dr. Kayode, the media concern for women and children is an advocacy concern, or what exactly is it about? What do you
media
do?
concern is basically responding to sexual violence. It started in 2000. I was writing in The Punch when I brought up the issue of child sexual abuse, and over 2,000 adults responded across the country that it happened to them.
So the statistics is quite high.
It's high. That was even
the record. And
interestingly enough, we are in a country that we know statistics is a big issue, but we've been working, and for us, as media concerned, we've been trying to get agencies to be able to responsible to give us reports. I mean, the police ought to give reports, annual reports to us on crime rates across all, everything happening, and the justice sector ought to also give reports. So, but we don't have that going on, but we've been pushing, and gradually things are coming up. But within the organization, we started work officially in 2003, and we opened the first rape crisis center in the country in 2005, working with 24-hour helplines across the country, and working with all the criminal justice sector, working with everybody, making sure cases, as well as providing psychosocial support. We also do mental health assessment for our victims, and we guide them through the process and work with them. We have victim advocates who move with them all along. Now, across, up until last year, records, we've done more than 7,000 cases. And 85% are children. And we're talking about really below 10 down, are more the majority than even the teenagers. Now, we also have had about 30 convictions in all of that. Some cases are not cases that will go to court. It depends on where they come in. Some cases come in, it's happened a long time. There's nothing more you can do. And child sexual abuse that you're talking about today is actually something that happens for a long time. It's not in our law.
No, when you say it happened a long time ago, so time would erase...
Time is also something our law. I'm sure you're talking to a legal person later on, they will bring that up.
But I see people being convicted for sexual offenses they committed years ago.
Abroad.
Yes.
Not in Nigeria.
We've been lucky, I'll use the word lucky now. We've been lucky to have one such case of a father who was sent to 2 years. The daughter called us on the helpline that she was being raped now. And when we got to the site with the police, of course, we don't go in. We got the police, we got to the site, she was picked up. When they brought her to the station, she actually said, nothing happened now, he was beating me up. But it's been happening. And the man confessed, and he was taken straight to court.
Okay. Yeah. Chinyere, you are also involved in some kind of work for sexual offenses awareness and victims rehabilitation initiative. Yeah. So tell us briefly, how do you rehabilitate? I mean, I know you've come through this when it was going on, and after I went on with you, did you have any kind of support? Did you go for counseling? How were you able to rise above, the abuse and become, strong women that you are today?
Now, not every survivor will need to come out publicly to share their story, but then we encourage that you get someone, if not a counselor, get someone, your pastor in church, or
what about families?
Family. Yeah. If a lot of times, victims and survivors, the families will blame them, or they just want to put it behind them. We don't want anybody else to,
No.
So in the end, the victims, the survivors do not get the support they need from family. And that's why we are really heavy on awareness creation and teaching prevention strategies to parents and other child caregivers, so they know what to do to protect the children under them. We work with schools, we work with parents, with teachers, and we are presently working with the FCT Education Secretariat in Abuja. We have programs running in schools, the program for girls. Even though, yes, we know that boys are also abused, but the majority of survivors are females. And so we have a peer education program that helps survivors, female survivors, child survivors, come out and then also help their friends.
Thank you so much, Chinyere.
Yeah,
thank you, Dr. Kayode. It's been, it's been really informative, speaking with you. Thank you so much for being a part of Amazons today. We will be taking a short break now. When we come back, we'll have more guests to talk to us about how to really protect the child or children from sexual abuses, and also how the law is protecting victims and the consequences for offenders after the break.
Yeah, there's no time limitation as to crime. You can only have limitation when it concerns civil matters. But when it has to do with crime, there's no time limitation. At any point in time, the state, comes up with investigation and discover that somebody has committed a crime and is culpable. Of course, the person can be charged, and you have the complainant that will be ready to come and give evidence. What we're having in Nigeria, actually, sister, is that we have this issue of, stigmatization.
Welcome back to the Amazons. Today we are still talking about child sexual abuse and the prevalence in Nigeria. How does the law protect the child from sexual abuse in Nigeria? How enforceable are these laws, if at all they are existing? We have joining us the immediate past chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association of Nigeria, Ikeja branch, Barrister Monday ONYEKACHI UBANI. Hello, Barrister. Welcome to Amazons. Please have a seat.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Amazons. First of all, welcome. And really, are there laws protecting children against sexual abuse in Nigeria? Are there laws at all?
Of course, there are. Of course, we have the Criminal Code, we have the Child Right Act, which is the latest law with respect to that. Even made a provision that if you have sexual intercourse with a child, you will be sentenced to life imprisonment. It's as serious as that. And it does not matter whether the child gives consent, because the child can't give any consent anyway. Now, if you are also involved in child harassment sexually or abuse, it attracts 14 years imprisonment by the Child Right Act itself. So there is a provision made in order to protect children. Of course, the way a civilized society or country is making provision for the vulnerables. There are people you consider vulnerable in the society, the women and the children. And any serious-minded country must make that provision. If you look at India, there is such laws in existence protecting also children against sexual harassment and abuse. And Nigeria is one of those signatories to all those international conventions and all that.
Okay, so have you had any cases, where sexual abuse cases and offenders have been brought before you or before the association, the MBA or the Ikeja branch, where you have actually gone through the whole org to make sure that they are brought to the court, prosecuted, judgment given, and they serve at that time? Because most times you have laws that are not even enforceable.
Yeah, that is where we have problems in the Nigerian legal system. There have been several cases. And there have been, if you read in the reports, there are so many of them. But the problem is that they don't end up in conclusion. The issue of prosecution, issue of investigation, and then ensuring that the witnesses will be in court and to give evidence in order to ensure that the accused person is sentenced. It doesn't most of the time end up in a successful trial. And most instances, the issue of the IPO, investigating police officer, is either he's transferred or he may require the complainant to be funding his coming to court. And if he's not funded, he won't come to court. And without his evidence and without evidence of the complainant, after 2 or 3 adjournments, he gets tired and he loses interest and the matter is struck out for want of diligent prosecution. So that's been the issue. So most times, 90% of those cases do not end up in a successful trial.
Thank you very much. I want to, sorry, Mbo, what I'd like to find out from you, you just mentioned something about life imprisonment now that, you know, the law in Nigeria actually could actually send such perpetrators to actually getting life imprisonment.
That's right.
Now, how can we relate it to, because it says sexual abuse on a child. Okay, what about the issue of the child bride?
The child...
the child bride.
Oh, bride. Okay, the issue of marrying away...
How do you read... what I'm trying to expatiate here is a child bride. If a man marries a young child, you understand? So that child, she's called a child because obviously she falls into the bracket of, you know, young people that are deemed to be...
under 18,
Exactly. Yeah. Now, what happens in a marriage is, you know, you have to obviously, you know, copulate and
consummate the marriage.
Exactly. So, and there's a law that says in Nigeria that if you actually abuse a child, you can go to life imprisonment. So doesn't this law also apply to these children who are in this marriage and being sexually abused in the name of marriage by their so-called husband?
Very intelligent question. The child right itself even prohibit child marriage. The law itself, yes, is there. There is a section that deals with the issue of giving away a child that is not up to 18. But the point is that this law they call the Child Right Act is a law that must be domesticated. What I mean is that the states must also enact such a similar provision in their own law.
So if
because it's applicable to the, you know, at the federal level. So most states now hide on the fact that they have not domesticated it, so it's not applicable to their state, especially northern states.
Oh.
A lot of them have not domesticated that Child Right Act. Only few states have.
So if I want to do it in Nigeria,
that, they keep on marrying away girls that are under 18 and claiming that since they have not domesticated that law, it's not applicable to them. And they say their own religion also encourages marrying these girls when they are very young. In fact, the younger they are, the better for them.
That's
you know, it would have been nice.
Massive loophole in the law.
That got married to a very young Egyptian, and we thought that something will happen even within, and up to this point in time, he's still a member representing a particular state, you know, in the House.
Also, one thing I'm interested in is there like a time limitation? Can I come after 20 years and, you know, finally maybe I have this? Because one thing I haven't found out is that a lot of people that I've talked to that were molested always have this urge to talk about it, maybe just to gain acceptance and be told that what you've done, it wasn't your fault and you had no you shouldn't blame yourself. Yes. It's the guilt that they want to get rid of. Can such a person go to court after 20 years or report to a police and say, you know what, I'm 40 now, but when I was 5, this was happening to me. Will anything be done to the person that was...
Yeah, there's no time limitation as to crime. You can only have limitation when it concerns civil matters. But when it has to do with crime, there's no time limitation. At any point in time, the state, you know, comes up with investigation and discover that somebody has committed a crime and is culpable. Of course, the person can be charged, and you have the complainant that will be ready to come and give evidence. What we're having in Nigeria, actually, sister, is that we have this issue of, you know, stigmatization. A lot of people are very afraid coming up to give evidence. They don't want to be stigmatized. And so if you don't have that veritable evidence coming from the complainant himself or herself, you know, giving evidence, there's no way you can succeed in getting the convict, you know, put away. So issue of people willing to come out and give evidence is also very key. So if he's not willing, but as I say, I'm telling you that there's no time limitation. So even if after 40 years, 50 years, you come up with any, you know, any evidence that this is what happened and there is proof, because it must also be proved beyond reasonable doubt because it's crime, you know, so the person will go in for it.
There's a bill that was passed by the Senate prescribing jail term for rapists. As that bill, can it be made into law? You know, whether it is domesticated or not. I mean,
no, that one will be applicable to all over. I don't know whether it has been assented to, because one thing is to pass a bill, one other thing is for it to be assented. If the president has assented, it becomes a law and it's applicable. Of course, you see, we are not short of good laws. There are so many. I'm a lawyer. I've gone through all the law books, you know, we have so many good laws. But what we're having problem in Nigeria is the issue of implementation. We don't have the political will most of the times, you know. And institutions are not weak. I mean, are not strong enough. Because you need to have strong institutions in order to implement laws. And then law that does not look at somebody who is a rich person, or this person has so much money. Because in Nigeria, the more money you have, in fact, the more you can buy justice. You get all the best lawyers. You get even the best judges to handle your matter. And you get scot-free. You know, that is the problem. So we have so many good laws, but implementation has always been the problem. So we can enact all the good laws. Look at the Freedom of Information Bill. And, you know, when it was a bill then, I was telling some people, that law will be enacted. It will not stop Nigerians from hiding information, especially the public officers. We have it now as a law.
Exactly.
Ask them for how much money some of the governors are using for security vote. They won't give you. Ask them how much they even use, you know, to settle their girlfriend. They won't give you.
So the law is there, but...
So the law is there, but it's not being implemented. So it's issue of implementation, not want of good laws. You know, even if they enact this one and make it life sentence, will families be willing to come up? They will tell you, it's a family matter, let's settle. Police will even be the one advising you to settle with the man who has raped your daughter.
That's true. Well, it's rather unfortunate because we had invited our friends from the police to be part of this program because we thought that they were, you know, a critical part to this discussion.
It's a prayer point whether they will come, you know, but certain things, you know.
Because we knew they were going to be a critical reference to this discussion, but unfortunately, well, like they say, they were too, because of other schedule, important schedule, they couldn't be here.
That's right.
You mentioned something about these cases, in most cases, being inconclusive because the IPO is either transferred or they still ask victims.
After having come several times, they lose interest in the case, yes.
So that becomes a fact that the victims are helpless and there's nothing they can do about their situation?
They have problems. We have problems with our judicial system. Even the magistrate, if you go to them, they will write returns on civil matters because those ones they come to a conclusion. But almost all the criminal cases, 90% of them do not in any way come to a conclusion. So no report to write. They are also complaining. We have a big problem in our criminal justice system. And something has to be done. But nothing is being done. Nothing is being done about it. Honestly, the complainants are left with nothing to. You see the adjournment, you go today, the adjourn it to October, you go in October, the adjourn it to January. And you have things to do. If you go in February, no, you will not come again. And that's the end. The next thing is that the magistrate now will strike out the matter for want of diligent prosecution.
Wow.
Do we have
anybody, just in any prison, that's anybody serving a term now for sexual abuse? Do we at least have some people?
There may be one or two, but not too many. Not too many. But sexual abuse goes on every day. Every day. I heard of the one, somebody just told me now, of a girl of less than 1 month that was raped. And when the man was arrested, he said he's the devil. You know, devil has no lawyer, you know, defending him. You know, almost every matter is heaped on the devil.
What I would like to ask you is...
of a man is not...
Justice is
also going to go scot-free.
The police will tell you, if you want to say he's devil, they will release him.
Huh?
You know what I want to ask you is, I mean, in as much as you said that we know we have laws, but these laws are not being, you know, enacted.
We have issues, yes.
You know, we're not using it.
That's right.
And it's not protecting the people that it's supposed to protect.
The victims.
Now, the victims? What I want to find out is, in some of the cases maybe that you handled in relating to child sexual abuse,
yes.
During the process, for example, if the person that abused the child is their father or their uncle, obviously, the minute it is discovered, however, in whichever way it's discovered, what happens to that child? Do they remove that child from that environment? And if that's what they do, where do they keep the child?
Very intelligent question. Let me tell you what happens. If it involves family, that's incestuous relationship, the mother will be willing to close this matter. Would not like to disgrace the husband. I'm just telling you, it's a family affair. If it is a brother, they won't like people to know that his brother is sleeping with his sister. So as much as possible, they close it up because they don't want neighbors to be laughing at them and all that. So the matter is closed up. But that is where we're different from the white. The white man will expose it.
Of course.
It becomes something of, you know, knowledge.
Yeah.
You know, you recorded for future generation to read and know how to avoid allowing sister and brother to sleep in the same bed and all that. I know those pitfalls and all that for knowledge's sake. That's how the white man does it. But ours is that, no, don't stigmatize, don't allow it to be exposed, especially the father, because it's very rare for a mother to sleep with a son. But I know many fathers sleep with their daughters. And these matters happen every day, but they're being closed up. In fact, I was reading one article where he said that all this issue of sexual abuse occur more in Africa than even in European countries. But most underreported.
That's true.
And even if it's reported, it doesn't go to any trial. It doesn't end in any conclusive trial, and you don't have convicts. And as long as you don't have convicts, you have more criminals out there than being in prison.
If the judiciary also has failed us, then it means that there is a total failure.
Well, the point is this. We must begin to, redress these things. It can be corrected. Who do you appoint as a judge? Most of the people they appoint as judges do not want to be a judge. But because the man is a commissioner or the man is a governor, the brother is an Oba, he nominates him. How do you generate the names of those who become judges in Nigeria? Is this State Judicial Service Commission that does generate? How do they generate the names? Nobody knows. And then they send them to NJC, they approve, and they become a judge. So is the man willing to be, does he have the capacity, the integrity to be a judge? So that one is an issue. The issue of infrastructure. Even in judiciary, they're still using longhand. It's only in Nigeria now, you see Nigerian judges still writing with longhand. You watch this man's trial in South Africa. Was the judge writing anything? Did you see any longhand writing? He wrote, everything was computerized and all that. So the judges in Nigeria still write, even the Supreme Court. So, issue of funding. Go and look at the budget of judiciary, every year in all the state and federation. It's reducing, at an increasing rate. So if you do all that, with judiciary and you're not taking care of it, if issue of infrastructure is not there, and you still expect the best from that particular arm of government, it's not possible. So it has to do with all those issues I've mentioned and more. There are more issues, really, besetting the judiciary that has made it not to be performing optimally. But I tell you, there are still those good ones inside judiciary. There are some very good judges, very intelligent, knowledgeable, they have the capacity, they have the integrity, but I don't know whether there are many of you.
It is so very sad that in all of this, a child is made to go through this and there's nothing.
The psychological trauma.
Exactly.
The stress in life and then the experience also, because I heard that those things live with them. Sometimes they can't even marry because when they remember the abuse they suffered when they were a child, they can't even, relate very well. Their entire behavioral pattern is distorted as a result of that experience. So, and that's why I said that civilized society, they sit down and make express provision in the law books for them. And they also ensure that when you commit that crime, you won't go scot-free. Pedophiles, they deal with them.
Yes, you have to, you're tagged everywhere you go. If you move into any neighborhood, you must go and report that you are a pedophile.
So why is it so difficult? I mean, these are simple laws that can be implemented, barrister. I still come back to the MBA and the judiciary. If you are helpless, where do we seek help from? If judiciary is also, hands up, look, I can't deal with this.
No, it's not as if judiciary is helpless now. I mean, everyone is helpless. What we're saying is that there must be a collaborative effort. But those of you, the journalists themselves, because we must all speak out. It's our society, it's our country. The journalists must speak out, the lawyers must speak out, everyone, even the judges themselves, because they're also suffering certain things, but they can't speak out also openly. The issue of underfunding that I told you, and somebody says, judiciary cannot be independent financially, but the Constitution has provided that they should control their budget. It's there in the Constitution, but somebody says it's not possible. So what I say that everyone, all of us must join hands to save this nation. There are issues with us as a nation. There are many issues. So, but when we get angry with the system, the day Nigerians get angry and begin to change leadership and begin to monitor what happens in the issue of governance and get interested in governance and get interested who becomes their ruler, the governor, the chairman, the president, and not on sentiment. That I borrow money to buy from. Somebody now gets, because I didn't have an issue. All those issues are not issues that Nigeria, what are you coming to present to us? What are you giving to us? How are you going to tackle the economy? How are you going to create jobs for the unemployed? There are so many unemployed youths. So what we're saying is that all of us must get angry with the system. Nigeria is not working. You had an experience recently.
Yes, I did, and I don't want to. Barrister Monday Onyekachi UBANI, past chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association Ikeja branch. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Anytime, any day.
Of the Amazons today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Even though you are maybe very sad.
Yes.
Thank you.
But that's the reality.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really, we must. While Barrister is still sitting here, Dolapo and Bimbo, this is. I'm just here and I feel so sad.
I feel
so
helpless.
sad. As Barrister was talking, you know, I'm reflecting on so many things, you know, about the lives that have been cut down short, and yet you don't get justice. The victims that have been that has been molested, some of them destroyed for life, and the law and the justice system is not there to protect them. Families who have lost children or whose children are missing till date, and we carry on as though everything is normal. So this society is not normal. It is not a normal society. Which society, other society operates the way Nigeria is operating? I can't think of one.
I don't know how to explain Nigerians. I'm a Nigerian.
Yes.
And I'm one of us. I do the same thing. We are all guilty. There's none of us that's not guilty. We know that these things are happening. We know that these things exist. We know that there's injustice. We're just thinking, okay, except it touches you personally, you don't react. You're just there living your life. It's like we bury our heads in the sand and we say everything is just going to be fine. God is in control. God must be tired of Nigeria.
Exactly.
We have to go. But in this situation of child sexual abuse, the system has failed the child. The system has failed the society. The system must change. The system can't change. You and I are the system. Play your part. In this instance, it's the parents who have to be the watchdog for their children. I don't know what else to say, but to put it squarely on the doorstep of the parent. Be vigilant. Know who you invite to your home. Educate your children. Let them be informative. They are no longer too young to understand certain things because the information is out there. It's better to teach them than for an outsider to teach them, and in a crude manner that will scare them for life. Until we see you again next week. Have a good evening.